Hello and welcome to the One More Songcast. I'd like to introduce to you a 3-part series that we're going to be releasing over the coming weeks. It's all about the money side of the local music business, what would be considered a bit of a touchy subject maybe to some. So we're going to be discussing that relationship between pub owner and musician, but also talking about the interactions that you might have when you're booking weddings, when you're booking parties, etc., but also dealing with agents and stuff like that as well. So we're going to be covering all the money side, the touchy subjects that maybe others aren't willing to cover. I remember when I first started out, I struggled to know what to charge at gigs. I struggled with the awkwardness of going collecting money, with negotiating, taking deposits. But after being stung a couple of times and hearing stories and stuff, you learn from your mistakes. Hopefully, if you're just getting started out in the local music business, then maybe you could avoid some of the mistakes that we made or I made. I think it's just nice to hear other musicians talk about things. Just getting an idea of how it generally works, how you can avoid awkward situations and be as professional as possible, basically. Look out for part 2 coming up and part 3, and we hope you enjoy part 1. How are we doing, Lee? You all right?
Yeah, not bad, mate. How are you?
Should we explain a little bit where we are today, what we're sort of doing and that?
Yeah, we're in a house that your dad's bought and soon to be renting out, aren't we?
Yeah. So we thought whilst we're here, we'll do a mini episode, you know. So that's what we're going to do today, and we're going to talk about payments today, aren't we?
Yeah. First of all, Luke, how were your gigs this weekend? Because obviously we had Friday night.
Yeah, of course. So we're in when we recorded this. It's end of November, isn't it? So we did the White Bear in Adlington. Yeah, so that was me, you, and your granddad, weren't it? It went down pretty well, didn't it? It was good. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, seemed to get a good bit of feedback. A couple of dancers. Your dad had a high school reunion.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like with that. I don't think that woman was too happy with us that we didn't play Bad Moon Rising.
That's it, Bad Moon Rising, yeah. Yeah, we just didn't bother, did we, in the end? It was
we got away with it, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. But yeah, then after that, I did my granddad were ill, so I did the station on my own on Saturday night. Decent, it was good, it was very busy. We had West Ham fans in there, because obviously the train station is right behind it. So they had Cardiff City fans in, because Preston had played Cardiff.
Yeah.
And then West Ham fans, because Burnley had played.
Right. Oh, so they had to come through Preston.
So they had to all go through that train station. Yeah. So you had this Cockney guy at the bar speaking to my dad, and my dad was like, "Oh yeah, they were playing Preston, were they?" And he was like, "No, Preston are in the Championship." And he was like, "Oh right. So you were playing Preston today, were you?" No, they're in the Championship. And I was like, "Dad, no, they've played Burnley." And he's like, "Oh right."
So he's probably asking, "Why didn't you go to Burnley?"
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, and then you had all the Cardiff City fans in there. They were happy because they're beating Preston, so they were singing around and stuff. So yeah, it's always it's a very flowy pub, that one. There's people in and out all the time. Yeah. So if you want to do one from the first set, in the second or third set you can, it's one of them.
All right, so you could just plan two of the same set and
literally,
get away with it. Like.
You'd have 90% of, had left. And yeah. So yeah. What about yourself?
Yeah, so... After our gig on Friday, I did a gig with Flash Floods on Saturday, and that was at Longridge Conservative Club. Brilliant night. Like, we just managed to get the sound absolutely right. And Chris, it was the best I've ever heard him sing. Chris Bowden here, he'll be on our Christmas special there so long, and not too near future. We had Jack, who was on here as well. He was stood on a chair with his wireless system. I went into the crowd dancing with mine. I decided to just take the in-ear monitors out and just go for it. So it was really fun. We played really well. Everyone's just absolutely on it. And then Sunday, I was with fan of the podcast, Ben Faraday. He supported me at Riston Cricket Club. Last couple of times I've played there's been an old school friend she now moved to Riston. So every time her dad actually used to play football with my dad as well. So like they come up Her dad gets absolutely wasted every time, and then starts telling me stories about like him and my dad's old footy team and all that. So yeah, it sounds like they had a few good nights out and a few characters in that dressing room. But yeah, the gig was absolutely brilliant. It was just bouncing second set. Took a while for the crowd to interaction to be going on, but now in the end it was just absolutely bouncing. So 3-gig weekend, and needless to say, I need a bit of a rest tonight.
Yeah. It's one of them. You go from, if you do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then it's Monday pod. We've got a Tuesday pod this week as well.
Yeah.
So it's just like non-stop. And then before you know it, you blink your eyes, you're back into Friday, Saturday, Sunday again. So no rest for the wicked, as they say. Yeah. But so our topic today then, Lee, is payments.
Yep. So we've got a few things to cover here. So the first thing I wanted to say is basically the most important thing is how you agree payment. So what is your process when you're getting booking a gig in? How do you agree payment? How do you go about agreeing your fee? You don't have to obviously say your fee.
Yeah, well, it's a tricky one. I think there's two ways to look at it. If you're approaching a venue or if they're approaching you, I think your tactics are slightly different. I don't know if tactics is the right word, but yeah, generally, I think it's usually the first thing that they ask you, isn't it? How much? And then you have to then explain, well, this is what I do, and for this, and this, I'll be this. And yeah, that's kind of how I do it, really. I mean, most of my interactions are on Messenger and stuff like that. I do have the odd phone call where I negotiate and stuff like that, but generally, it's if a venue messages me, the first thing they usually come in with anyway is how much. Yeah. So then you find yourself explaining what you're getting for this much almost, and then it goes from there, really.
So, like, the way I base it, like, obviously, if you approach them, then you've kind of got to be a bit flexible, like you say. But, you know, I'll go in, it's so much for this, for 2 45-minute sets, and obviously you're hiring my gear. I'm travelling this far to your venue. So if you're self-employed particularly, you've got to work out, like, what your expenses are. So I know some people will actually, like, agree to have so many free drinks in there, or drinks included anyway. But, like, you've got to think about whether it's worth your time. If you're, you know, full-time employed and it doesn't matter to you, this is just a bit of extra cash, maybe it's not a thing. You don't maybe bump it up for travel or whatever. But, you know, if you've got a hotel to stay in, I know some people actually pay for you to do the wedding. And then they're like, they're actually paying for your hotel and stuff like that as well. There's people that are willing to do that.
I did a few in Scotland a couple of years ago. They'd seen me at a gig in Chorley and said, we've got a wedding in Scotland, we'd love you to come and do it, blah, blah, blah. I didn't think anything of it. But yeah, like you say, then have to factor in all the fuel and accommodation as well. So they put me up, and then I ended up doing another wedding off the back of that. So I ended up going to Scotland about 3 times in the same year. But like I say, it's like, not only are they paying for a wedding fee, but they're also paying for you to stay over and all the fuel it takes to go from Chorley to Scotland.
It's a full tank of fuel.
It's a great experience, but it's a, you know, you have to, that is when you have to explain to them, right, well, you know, you are going to have to put me up because, you know, I'll be there all day. I think one of them, though, I did travel back the same night, so it weren't too bad, but it was, it was...
Was it an afternoon too, that?
Yeah, it was kind of like post-ceremony and like during the wedding breakfast, so then it got to like 6 o'clock or whatever, and I'd done, so then whatever it was, 3-hour drive back home or whatever, so it weren't too bad, but...
It's a long old drive to Scotland, isn't it, as well, like...
Well, going back to what you were saying about fuel and stuff, I don't necessarily mention that if a pub contacts me, but you bear that in mind then when you're planning the price, you know, kind of thing. But you will have some venues, as me and you both know well, where that's the set price for the pub. It doesn't matter if you're coming from, God knows, Cumbria or wherever. That's the set price that they charge, and they won't budge too much on that. So it just does depend on the venue and, you know, also whether they've booked you for maybe 5-6 times in that year. You know the owners well. You know the setup is generally easy, or you know, then you can kind of keep the price the same. But yeah, it's a tricky one. But
I think the other thing that people don't consider is, like, when they're booking you for 2 45 minutes, they're not just booking you for 2 45 minutes. You're like, they're hiring your gear, one thing, but you're also, they're paying you for your time in the venue. So whenever someone goes to a work, if you don't have a specific workplace, then the workplace place would technically pay you from when you leave your house, and that should be how it is.
Yeah, I think that's why if somebody has a gripe, they go, "Oh, you only do an hour and a half. I'm paying you this much."
Well,
I think, but then you factored all that in, haven't you? So, like you say, it's not necessarily that they're paying you for that, but it's kind of like the money that we get for the amount of time that we're performing. It probably seems like quite a lot. But like when you say, I end up setting off about, say the venue's half an hour away, I like to get there about an hour before to set up. Because you sound check, set up, going and getting changed and all that. And sometimes an hour and 15, it depends. So like you say, you can be setting off from your house at 6 o'clock and not get back till 11:30, 12 o'clock for a 8:30 gig, so.
Yeah, and I think as well, like there's a list of things, like I've seen these like memes describing what people think they're paying for, and it was like an hour and a half of music or an hour and a half of music for someone to sing. Yeah, but what you're actually paying for is the gear, the clothing that you're wearing, the time you're in the venue, the travel expenses, like everything, massive list of what you're actually paying for a musician. That leads quite nicely onto the next part, which is when to drop the fee. So when would you typically consider dropping your fee? So for one thing, I've got mates rates. Have you done gigs at mates rates before, or would you?
Yeah, I have. It depends how friendly you are. Like we were sort of saying off camera before, you feel like when it comes to gigging, even if someone's just met you once, they feel like it's hard to say, they feel like they're your mate, but everyone wants the best price, even if they've met you once in a pub and they've chatted to you for 15 minutes. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, but I know you from things. So that's always difficult. I think mates rates in terms of like doing your friends' parties and weddings and stuff. Yeah, of course. Like you'll sort them out a good price. I mean, there's even been times for very, very close friends where I've done it for free and stuff, which is, it's part of it, I suppose. It's just like you get your mate to come and help you with your boiler or something if that's their trade, and they probably wouldn't charge you. It's a similar thing for self-employed people, I think. But in terms of mates rates, it just depends really. Unless you're very close mates, I find it difficult to sort of, because like I say, everyone will say that they're your friend to some degree, so it's difficult, isn't it?
I think it's similar to that one to a venue. Like if they've offered you 5 or 6 gigs a year, you can maybe afford to do it at a lower price. Do you know what I mean? And it's not like you're going to go, okay, you're booking me 5 times, but I'm going to charge you X amount. Yeah. Like even if you're traveling a bit further to get there, you'll probably factor in a rate that still enables you to cover your travel, but maybe it would be lower than if it was just a one-off booking. Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors with that, and like you say, it does depend how close you are to the person or the venue, or how many times you get booked. The next one would be working with budgets. This one is probably a common one.
It's tough, this, because like them two, it's a bit besides the point, but let's say, for example, someone contacts you for a gig. You don't know what price they have in mind, do you? So it's really difficult to say like, oh, this is my price. And they go, oh, brilliant, fantastic. And you're like, maybe I could have done it for a bit more. Or they might go, oh, no way, sorry, we're not interested now. So it's difficult to meet in the middle, because you don't want to undersell yourself and do a gig for a price that isn't right for you, but also you don't want to go in too way above that they just talks break down. It's difficult to. So I think it was you that told me. It might have been somebody else. You said maybe start asking them, well, what's your budget? And it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, because they could just lie and say, oh, my budget's £100, and you'd be like, right, okay, well, that's not going to work. No. Or they could be like, well, this is what we usually pay for bands. And you could go, all right, okay then, well, my fee is usually this, but, I can maybe work beyond that, or how does this sound? So, it can work one or two ways, that really. Yeah, I think there's a way to go in with that. I think at certain events, like, if someone approaches me, I'll generally go in with I'm getting a price document together, because it's just, you end up having to say, right, if you offer a few different things, like I do acoustic backing tracks, or like I'm starting to do next year some like sort of theme nights, whether it's like a 60s night, noughties indie night, a 90s indie night. There'll be a few different things there. So I'm now going in with a price list, or normally I'm offering a trio, I'm offering the band, I'm offering the solo, if it's a venue that does
different types of acts. So I'll go in with a few prices and it just ends up being one long message. But if they say that's too expensive, that's when I ask the question, well, what is your budget? Let's see if we can get closer to it. But if I've approached them, generally I'll try and say, listen, if we can, right, okay, that's a bit lower than what I would take, but if you can book me 2 or 3 times, I can probably work with that. So then you're not feeling like you're losing out as much because you're covered then till the end of the year. If it's obviously miles and miles away, you can't keep going to somewhere for like a lesser fee as such.
It's difficult if you hold the cards in the sense, like I've said it a couple of times, I'm quite lucky. I don't really go looking for gigs that often. So when somebody comes to me, I wouldn't say you hold the cards necessarily, but it's like, well, you tell them your fee, they've come to you. So if they don't like that, then that is what it is. Whereas if I suppose you're wanting more gigs and you go into venues because you need more gigs, then you're the one that has to be a bit more flexible because, you know, you want that gig. It's difficult though because you can go in at a certain price and go, if you want to book me after this, it's this, and then people can take advantage of that and just book you for the one gig on a really cheap fee, and then you won't hear from them again, regardless of how good the gig went. So yeah, that is tricky as well. But you've got to, like I said before, you've got to balance it between they're contacting you, so they obviously like you, or they've heard good things about you, or they've actually seen you at a gig before. So that means you can go in with your usual prices. Whereas if there's a venue that you really want to go to, and they're proving a bit difficult, then you might have to be a bit more flexible. Really, that's the bottom line of it. Really,
that's a massive fact. So another one that I sometimes drop the fee for, it just depends what you're doing. If the PA is provided, so. My take on this, Luke, is if there's a sound engineer there, they've got someone looking after me like that, I could turn up with just an acoustic guitar and a couple of leads, and I'm going on half an hour before I start. Probably if there's more bands on, like, or whatever, if it's like a festival setup. Do you ever really drop your fee for that? Mainly because it's a shorter set as well, so you have to come up with a fee for that. Generally.
I think it's, so I said before, I'm doing the Christmas markets in Chorley, and they have full PA provided, don't they? And they have a sound engineer as well. I get a bit, we and you are very different in the sense that PA provided is good, but I'm not always that confident on using other people's gear. So if you've got a sound engineer there as well, then brilliant. But if you haven't, I never really feel comfortable messing around on other people's speakers and stuff like that. So I feel like it's more of an inconvenience that for me. Like, so when someone says, oh, we've got a PA, I'll be like, yeah, but I use my own anyway. If they've got a sound engineer, then that's different because hopefully you know what they're doing. But my point is, so the one in Chorley has got a sound engineer. They've got their own PA. I know that I'm going to have to bring a lot less equipment, and you'd hope that you're in good hands sound-wise as well. So it's like, you kind of go, I said it to Neil, actually, who organises the event. I said, oh, well, seeing as you've got your own sound engineer and equipment system, I said, I'll do it for this price. And he was like, why? Does that mean it's cheaper or dearer? And I was like, well, obviously cheaper because I'm not having to bring as much stuff. And he didn't quite get why that would be cheaper at the start. But when you explain it, he understood. So
I think that is the thing, isn't it? Like, it just depends, because like a lot of venues, when they provided a PA, it used to be some of the worst stuff provided to you. Now, I think whenever I've been into a venue that's got a PA like a half decent, like they're not always the best, but they're half decent most of the time. So if you've got someone able to provide that to you, like where it's half decent sound and you can work with it, or it's something you've used before and you know how to tweak it, then great. But if you're doing the work yourself, I think there's still an element of that. Like, you're still probably going to want to get there an hour before to make sure everything's all right. So
even more so, because if you're then messing about with something that you know, at least you know your own gear, so it's going to be a faster setup, even though everything's there. If you're trying to get the EQ right, and you know what it's like at some venues as well, you can't actually really get out to listen in some because it's so cramped and crowded. So if you're playing on somebody else's PA system, like I noticed it at the Doghouse, is it that you play at and Chris plays at? Some nights it's difficult, but they're overhead, aren't they? but some nights that seems very, very busy. So you are playing with fire a little bit in the sense of sound, but then maybe I'm just a bit too anal with it as well.
The difference is at the Doghouse, you've got your own desk and it plugs into their speakers. Yeah. So more than anything, right, so it's not necessarily that they've got a full PA provided. It's the fact that it's half the work still, because plugging a mixer into a wall is different than putting 2 speakers on a stand and all that. It's a lot of extra lifting speakers there, especially yours. They're quite heavy, aren't they? Yeah. So I think it literally does depend on what the PA provided is. Have they got a sound engineer or not?
Yeah.
If they haven't, then it's not really something I'm sort of willing to drop a fee for. If they've got a sound engineer and you can literally be in a venue like you're playing an hour and you can be in and out within 2 hours, then fair enough. Like, because they are actually almost paying you for a 2-hour time slot. It's like half your time to what you normally are.
Yeah, and I think I factor that into the Christmas markets. I think when we did the Exton Beer Festival as well, we had full sound engineer and stuff. So like you say, I don't think we would have we got as much as maybe what you would get for a trio that day, but like it was fairly easy, weren't it, to a degree. So again, you have to factor that in, I think.
I think maybe with a trio it's a lot more because of the electric guitar, the acoustic drums. I think it's a bit different, but at least they're providing the mics for it and stuff like that. Right, so the next one is charity gigs. So there's a bit of a tough one with this. It's a bit of a grey area because, there's sometimes it depends who's setting it up for me.
Yeah.
Like, what is the cause? Who's setting it up? And when they promise you exposure, like, show me, like, tell me how many tickets are sold. Like, what is it? Is it a ticketed event? What is it that I'm actually getting exposure for? Because someone will go, oh, but it'll be great exposure. Yeah, but to people that are never going to book you again.
Yeah, I think a bit of a red flag with this one. I think when I very first started out singing with the band that I was first in, they were very obsessed about doing charity gigs and stuff, but they had their own jobs. A lot of them were retired. Gigging wasn't the priority. Whereas for working musicians, like it sounds harsh to say, but there's only so much charity you can do when it's your job, really.
Yeah.
Maybe when you're starting out and you want that experience, I suppose it's similar to the open mic kind of attitude or sort of approach, in the sense that you're building your experience, and what's better to do that than in a live environment? Maybe you do some charity stuff. But if someone came up to me now and said, I've got a charity do on blah blah blah, would I do it? Unless it was something that was very close to home, probably not, because I need the money for income like anybody else. It's like a plumber or whoever, they say, oh, I've got a charity house, or maybe not the same, but can you donate your fee that you do to fix my house up to charity? He's more than likely going to say no, isn't he? Yeah. So the only reason I would do a charity gig, for example, I know a boy personally who spends a lot of time at Derrion House. So if there was ever an event on where he was involved, I would probably do that as, for free. And sometimes I've done care homes for free if I know the residents and stuff like that. But very rarely would I do charity gigs just on a whim for a charity that I have no affiliation with particularly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think my attitude's changed with this. Like, I think at the start it was like a chance to showcase my original music. Like, right, I was doing it with it was Lost in Echoes now before the Impact. We were doing it then. I was doing a few myself. Because I play originals music, like a lot of the time you are playing for free. Most of the time, if you can't get your mates there, then you're going to be playing for free because you're not selling the tickets to get paid a lot of the time. And then, like, the most you're going to get most of the time is like a bit of expenses covered or whatever. But to do a charity gig where they say, oh yeah, it's 245s, and like, we need you to provide the PA, not a chance. Like, and I think my attitude mainly changed towards this because you see food vendors coming out. You're having to pay for food. Like, you're not telling me they're not getting anything out of it. They're not donating the profits. The bars, if it's in a pub, they're not donating their profits most of the time. So you wouldn't, like, there's people working for charities that get paid by the charities. They've got a wage as well. So there's got to be for me. There's got to be an offer to be paid, and if then it's I'll make the decision to donate that fee.
Right, I see. Yeah, but then is it not the pressure then, or I suppose it's your decision at the end. Then, isn't it?
I think if they offer the money, then I'll actually generally offer to waiver the travel or something like that, because I can say like, right, do you know what?
Yeah.
Normally it'd be this, but just donate that bit to charity for me, and like we'll call it there. And I'll maybe reduce the rate, but only if they offer. If they say it's completely free, or it's if it's miles away and they're like an hour away and they want me to do an hour's set and they've not provided anything, it's just not possible.
It's just in any other walk of life. Yeah, obviously charity is fantastic if you can do that and you're in a position to do that, then brilliant. But like, what if you did a charity gig every week or whatever, or you're constantly helping people out that spot you, then how's that? How are you going to be able to? They say charity starts at home first and foremost, so it's difficult to like make a living if you're going to be constantly giving charity gigs. So maybe the odd one here and there is fine, but I don't think anyone can hold it against you really as a regular thing, can they?
Yeah, this ties in with the next one. I did just put freebies down. So like you said, you've done some stuff for free for mates. I know DJ Pants in Longridge. I think he started listening to the podcast the other week. Yeah.
Hello.
So shout out to Pants if you're listening, mate. He does loads around Longridge, but because he travels the country, he's like in a Paul Heaton tribute act or Beautiful South tribute. Yeah. He'll do loads around the country. So if he makes he's got a limit where if he makes that money, then he'll go and offer his 100 quid gigs or his free gigs. Right. So this comes in like when to reduce your rate sort of thing. Like if he goes down to Hertfordshire, for example, he'll find a place halfway between. He'll stay over the night and then go, right.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Like, he'll use it as a chance to get him and his missus some time away as well. So what he'll do is he'll find a place halfway home, say, right, we'll go and stay there the night, and he'll ring round a load of pubs and say, listen, do you want a singer for the night? 100 quid.
Right, it's gonna cost you. I see, yeah.
And like most of them will take it. So then as long as he gets his expenses covered, he's got enough for his bills, and then he'll do that.
Right, I see, yeah. And that's quite interesting, yeah.
He did, he did Chris.
But that's not doing charity gigs on the way home, is it?
No,
it's just doing extra little bits and bats.
It's something I just thought about, but he'll also do like freebies for mates.
Yeah.
Like he did Chris's 40th and wouldn't take a penny for it. Chris wasn't allowed to pay for his beer. He just said, no, you've asked me to do your party. You're a mate of mine. I'm not going to charge you. Yeah. And that's, again, if you can do that, great.
Yeah,
like he said, he has to make his money first before he can do that.
Yeah. It's I think people always say like, what's the best price you can do, and then when you actually explain it to them and say, well, I have knocked you a little bit off, but it's this, and this. It's I sort of had it with somebody recently where they were like, oh, it's just way out of our budget, and I was like, yeah, I get that. I have taken a little bit off, but it's very close to Christmas, and and take it or leave it kind of thing, really. So you've got to be a bit strong-willed. Like if somebody says no and they want you to do it for a lot less, just consider like, is it worth it? And if it isn't, then don't do it.
I think the other thing is it's because there's other people out there willing to go out for lower, which is fine. Yeah. But that's their price. It's not my price. Like I had someone ask for a quote for a wedding. I'm like, well, what do you want? Where is it? Like, what time we've got access to the venue? Because there's a lot of questions when you're agreeing a fee as well, isn't there?
Weddings especially, yeah.
So you've got to take into account certain things. And then when I said the price, they're like, oh, no, we had someone that we know, like, we're just going to do it for this much. So that's our budget. I was like, well, I don't think you're going to get many people willing to do that.
Everything's premier but the price.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I know there will be bands out there that just because it's a wedding, like knock 5 times onto the price or whatever.
Yeah.
And sometimes understandably so, depending where it is and how local it is. But like just don't expect everyone to do the same thing, because there's different situations, That guy might have a full-time job and you've gone and seen him quite a lot and he considers you a friend or someone close enough to know that he might get repeating bookings out of, or he's not bothered about the money, whereas I have to be bothered about the money.
Exactly, yeah. That's sort of that's what I was trying to get at. I hope it's come across in the right way with the charity gigs as well. Like we have to make money. So it's, you know, unless or we do another job. So it's one of them really, you know. So if you want to see me as well practiced, hopefully that you think I am and stuff, then I've got to be making some money from it, or else I'll have to go into a different career ultimately. So
yeah, and just to let people know who are going out and doing stuff for less money, like, we're not here to tell you what you should be charging. The market, there is a market that kind of dictates a rough fee, but at the end of the day, it's your choice.
There's so many gigs around that if you're happy to go out for a really low fee, like, people say that it affects the market, but ultimately, if you know your worth, and ultimately, if you're good enough as well, the gigs will come in. So it is what it is, you know.
Yeah, and also, like, there are elements where, like, if you've been in a venue for a couple of years or whatever, and they know you're good, they know what you're going to get out here, and you say, listen, I can't do it for this much anymore. I'm going to have to up my fees because of this and this and that. Generally, they'll go, yeah, okay. Some people will take exception to that, but it's not.
Thank you for making it to the end of our episode. There is going to be a part 2 and a part 3 available of our payment series. So if it is available, it will be available to watch in the palm of my hand right here. We look forward to seeing you on the next video. Cheers.